and sharing my screen, and I'm going to be a little bit lazy today because the problem that we the part of that last question that we still have to work with, we're going to do based on what we did last class. So I'm going to just add today's notes to the end of the document that was last class notes. And what I'll do is in Blackboard, I'll replace the document with last class notes with today's notes and label it that it's the notes for both days. That annuity homework was due on Friday. The homework on cars is due today. The mortgage, let me double check that now. I'm questioning myself. The homework on cars, yeah, is due today. The homework on mortgages right now is due on the 28th. People need extra time on Wednesday. We'll look at that. Test 4 will be available from Wednesday until, I'm sorry, that should be a 5, until Saturday. It's due by the end of the day on Saturday. The last My Math Lab can be worked on will be Sunday 2nd. Project 4 will be due on the 3rd. The final exam will be due by the end of the day on the 5th. On Friday, we will be, on Wednesday, we'll be looking at review for test 4. And then on Friday and Monday, we'll be looking at review for the final. Somebody had asked last class, test 4 has 16 questions. What we look at on Wednesday will be very close to it. The final is made up of questions from your old tests. So if you go into the My Math Lab gradebook and you click on your old tests, there's a place where you can review them and go over them. The final exam is made up of 33 questions. And again, each of the questions was taken from one of the old tests. Again, because they're in my labs, they're algorithmically generated, which means that it'll be the same question, but the numbers will change. Before we get started picking up from where we last left off, does anybody want to look at any homework questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
Homework 24, 8.5, question 6.
Okay. Whoops, I have to apologize. I have to sign in again. I have to apologize. I thought I had this open, but I have it open on my Chromebook and not on the Surface, so it's going to take a minute. Okay, just and you said homework 8.5, which homework 24, which is section 8.5.
Question 6.
Question 6. Gotcha. Okay, this question deals with one of our annuities. Let me just real quick capture it and put it into the notes. Oh, that's no good. There we go. That's a little bit better. Use the appropriate formula to determine the periodic deposit and how much of the financial goal comes from deposits and how much of it comes from interests. And so here we are looking for the deposit. We know the future value is $220,000. We know that the rate is 4.5%, which would be 0.045. We know that the time is 15 years. We know it's monthly, so N is 12. So NT 15 times 12 would be 180. And give me just a minute. Make sure I look up the formula. We've got that with an annuity. P is equal to A times R over N over parentheses, 1 plus R over N, close parentheses to the NT minus 1. With me so far?
Yes.
And so substituting it then, this is 22,000 times 0.045 over 12 over parentheses, 1 plus 0.045 over 12 to the 180th minus 1. And now frantically searching for my calculator. When I type that in, I'm typing 220,000 times parentheses 0.045 divided by 12, close parentheses, divided by, open, 1 plus 0.045 divided by 12, close parentheses, carrot up 180, arrow out of there, minus 1, close parentheses. Just because I'm having one of those days, I am going to just double go through and make sure that it looks like I typed all my numbers in correctly. And so I'm getting that those payments would be 857.9852. The directions, I apologize. When I copy and paste it, I didn't get, do not round to the final answer by putting it all into our calculator at once. We're not rounding to the final answer. Then it says round up to the nearest dollar. So no matter what that cent part was like, they tell me that I should round up. So that's 850, up would be $858. That part all right.
Yes.
Then it asks how much of the financial goal comes from deposits and how much from interest. Well, the deposits would be that 858 times the 180. And here I have to apologize. I'm not sure if they want you to use the 858 or the 857.99. Although I'm thinking a penny off, it would be what, $1.80 off in the long run. I don't think they do want you to do that though. So 858 times 180, the amount that comes from payments would be 154,440. The total of the payments. And then the interest would be the difference between that 220,000 that we get out and the 154,440 that we put in. It is $65,560 interest. Any better?
Yes, but when I was entering it on my lab,
Mhm.
it was giving me a hard time. So I think it was because I wasn't rounding it to the nearest dollar.
Okay. Do me a favor, if that happens, when you're doing it in my labs and you feel like you're doing it right and it's giving you a hard time, please go over here and use that ask my instructor. Because we can straighten those problems out long before you get frustrated. Okay,
Thank you.
welcome. Anybody want to look at anything else? Or Marilyn, did you want to look at anything else?
Yes, please.
Okay, Michaela.
For homework 26, the last two questions I was getting confused on.
Okay, let me go. Well,
You can do either one because I think they're pretty much the
homework
same.
26. Let's go to that preview. So either question 6 or 7?
Yes.
Well, I am guessing that those questions at the end might deal with what we're going to discuss today. But let's first look at question 6.
I agree because I started working on it and I was like, oh, I don't think we have gotten that there yet.
Okay, now question 6 should not be problematic. Question 7, it deals with something very much different, and it's just a matter of playing with percents. So can we finish from where we left off last class and then look at question 6 and then 7? And if there's not time to look at both of them, I'll make sure that those will be due on Friday instead of Wednesday. Okay?
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. So when last we met, we had left off looking at mortgage, where we were borrowing $80,000. We were making monthly payments. We looked at a 30-year at 4.32% and a 15-year at 4%. And we figured out what the monthly payments would be to the nearest dollar. Then to figure out the total cost, the total of our payments, we took that monthly payment and multiplied it by NT, the number of payments. And then to find the total interest that we paid, we took the total of the payments and we subtracted that, the principal, the amount that we borrowed. And we discussed that 30-year mortgage, your payments are lower, but in the long term, you're paying a lot more money. Everybody okay there?
Yeah.
What we didn't look at was, I guess I'll go to the next page, an amortization schedule. Or table. And what it does is it shows every payment. It shows how much of the payment goes to interest. And it shows how much of the payment goes to the principal. And it shows the balance owed. For the part that's interest, for each month, we're going to use simple interest. Where I equals PRT, but but T is going to be 1/12 because we're looking at a time period of 1 month. And what this does is it shows you that with each successive payment, the amount of interest goes down and the amount that goes to the principal goes up. As the amount that goes to applied to the principal increases, it makes sense that your interest amount would decrease. And this is where that idea that if you get to have the opportunity to pay any extra money during a given month, what it does is it brings down the principal, because anything above the interest owed for that month does get applied to the principal. And the quicker you bring down the principal, the quicker you pay off the loan and the less interest you pay. So that the amount of interest that you pay could be less than what you figured for the full mortgage if you pay it off early. So for an example, let's use that 30-year mortgage that we talked about with the 4.32% rate, where we figured our payments are $397 and our principal is $80,000. And that was where we had left off on Friday. So I'm going to make my table at the top of the page. And I'm going to do my scrap work down below. So we'll have our payment number. We'll have the amount that goes to interest. We'll have the amount that goes to principal. And then we'll have the balance that we owe. For payment 1, if we use that simple interest formula, here our principal is the $80,000 because we still owe the whole thing. For each of these, our rate will be that 0.0432. And for each of these, our time will be 1/12. And that first month, where we owe the full $80,000, I have to apologize. My stylus does not want, there it goes, didn't want to write for a minute. Our interest would be that $80,000 times that 0.0432 times 1/12. And so I'm going to be quiet for a minute and ask you folks to please multiply that out for me. What are you getting?
I got 288.
Beautiful. So did I. Did everybody else also get $288?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
our first
Yes.
mortgage payment, $288 is principal. Well, if $288 is principal and we are making payments of $397, when we do that subtraction, the only amount of that money that's going towards the cost of the house is $109. Do you see how most of the payment is going to interest and a smaller amount is going to the pay for the house?
Yeah.
And so when we take that $80,000 that we owe and subtract that $109 that we're paying, We now only owe $79,891 on the house. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for our second payment, when we use that I equals PRT, that's this time, that $79,891 is my principal, because that's all I owe. My rate is still there 0.0432, and my time is still a month, 1/12 of a year. Oops, and I forgot to add in here that this is the work for payment too. And so when I take this amount times the 0.0432 times the 1/12, this time my interest, and let's write that down so that everybody knows what we did computation wise. It's lower. It's $287.61. And so when I take my payment and subtract that amount, I get that $109.39 is going towards the house. And I'm owning a little bit more of my house each payment. And so when I take that 79,891 minus the 109.39, now I only owe $79,781.61. And you see how gradually the interest with each payment will go down. And so the part of the payment that goes to the principal would go up, and the balance that I owe will decrease. And so in any given month, if instead of paying that $397, you paid more, you paid $500, you paid $600, that interest that's taken out would be what it would be for that payment, and the rest would all go to the principal, and the principal would go down in a bigger jump, which means the next month the amount that's interest will be, reduced by that much more. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
On the test, in the homework, I'm not going to ask you to make an amortization schedule, but I think this kind of clarifies that idea that so much of each payment is for interest, so much is for principal. Extra money could go to the principal, and it would make your loan end quicker and your total interest costs be less. I know when we bought our first house, and I believe also when we bought this house, we got a schedule like this that showed all of our payments. And at the very end, almost all of your money is going to the principal and very little of it is going to the interest. Somewhere in the middle of that loan, the two kind of equal out a little bit. So I know when we bought our house, tax law at that point in time, the amount of your mortgage payment that went to interest was a tax deduction. And so that high amount of payment going to interest at the beginning was good in terms of your income taxes. Although I do believe that the previous administration got rid of that deduction. And so, we'll have to see what happens in the future. But though that was the one thing that we hadn't dealt with. So I wanted to make sure we got through that. If no, does anybody have any questions on that? If not, let's go and let's look at those two questions. The first one, question number 6. Says, use the amortization formula to determine the regular payment amount rounded to the nearest dollar. Consider the following pair of mortgage loans options for a $140,000 mortgage. Which mortgage has a larger total cost? And by total cost, I mean closing costs plus the amount paid for points plus the total cost of interest, and by how much. So let's go ahead and let me, we'll kind of bounce back and forth. Let me take a picture of the question, and then let's type our answer in. And so first, let's look at mortgage A. A is 30 years, so T is 30. The rate is 7.25%, which would be 0.0725. And again, you can tell that this is a slightly older question because the interest rates are a bit higher. The payments will be monthly. Well, it doesn't state it. With mortgages, you usually can assume that. And the amount that we're borrowing is $140,000. And NT would be that 12 times that 30, or that we're making 360 payments. So the payment would be that 140,000 times 0.0725 over 12 over parentheses, 1. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to double those parentheses. And it's not letting me erase that. Let's switch to the eraser. Parentheses 1 minus parentheses 1 plus 0.0725 over 12, close parentheses. Remember, this exponent is negative, so we're raising it to the negative 360. And so here they just say round to the nearest dollar and not round up. So we'll just use our regular rounding rules. I'm going to type in my 140,000 times parentheses 0.0725 divided by 12, close parentheses, divided by parentheses 1 minus parentheses 1 plus 0.0725 divided by 12, close parentheses, carry it up for exponent, negative sign, 360, arrow out of the exponent, close parentheses. And so I'm getting that my payment is $955,046. And they just say to round, so we'll use that $955. Now, our points. This loan is 1 point, so it's 1% of the mortgage amount, which gives me $1,400. We know that our closing costs is $2,100. And let's see, they want the total cost of interest. So for the total cost of interest, we're going to take that payment, multiply it by the number of payments, which gives me that the total of my payments is $343,800, and we're borrowing $140,000. And so the total of the interest, that difference, would be $203,800. And so when I add those all up, because that is what the question is asking us to add, the 1,400 plus the 2,100 plus the 203,800, we're getting $207,300. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now we want to do the exact same thing, but with mortgage B. And over here, I think when we talked about points before, we talked about that sometimes you can get a lower interest rate if you pay more points. And sometimes you have to look and see which, is the interest rate enough lower to make a difference in the big picture as opposed to the cost of points or not. And so let's go through and let's do this for mortgage B. For mortgage B, our time, I believe, is also 30 years. You know what? I'm going to be a jerk for just a minute. And oops, I thought paste that picture in once more so that I don't have to keep bouncing up and down. Because I don't know about you guys, but I would be seasick with the amount of times that we're bouncing this thing up and down. Our rate for this one is 0.0675. Our payments will be monthly, so NT is still 360. And what am I missing? Our principal is still that $140,000. So for the payment, we'll use that same formula again. We'll take the $140,000. This time multiplying by 0.0675 over 12. And if you're real good at scrolling up, you can find where we typed it in before because everything remains the same except the interest rate. And so I'm going to be that lazy person and do that. And it didn't work because I pressed the wrong button. So I guess I won't be that lazy person and I'll do it again. And so this time I'm getting 908.037. And again, to the nearest dollar, that would be $908. And so this time our points are 2%. of the mortgage amount, which doubles them to 2,800. Our closing costs are the same, at 2,100. And to figure the amount that's interest, we're again going to take our payments and multiply them by that 360, because we are making 360 payments, giving me 326,880. And when I subtract that 140,000, I get that the total of the interest this time is $186,880. And so when I add the 2,800 and the 2,100, I'm getting that the total here is 191,780. Is everybody else getting the same? Do I
Yeah.
need? Yeah, okay. And so now what the question asks us to do is to compare them. Does everybody see that B is less? And the difference between the two would be the 203,800 minus the 191,780. And so it would save us $12,020. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see, we've got 12,020. So mortgage A has the larger cost. And the difference is the no, I don't want to close that. I want to move it. And it's not letting me. Okay, 12020. Uh-oh, what did we do wrong? Okay, who can see the careless mistake in the arithmetic? Unless it's just that we didn't round up.
Yeah, I ran into that before. That it
Because
wants us to
I-
round it up.
It doesn't say to round up, but let's go ahead and see if we did the same thing, not rounding up, although I think the extra dollar in both of them would not make a difference. Let's see. We've got instead 909 times 360 gives me, instead, if I use the 909, this would be, whoops, 327, 240. And when I subtract the 140, gives me 187, 240. And so
I put it in my math labs and it said like 10,000 something was the answer.
Okay. Maybe 240. Although when you put it in, you probably had slightly different numbers.
I might have.
Yeah, the numbers changed.
I'm just thinking with this change, what it's, the difference is, if I just add $1, it's just adding $360 to each of them. And so the difference being the same amount for each of them would still subtract out. Because here we'll have 204, 160. And so this amount would be 207, 660. Oh, Lord. You know what happened, you guys? When I subtracted, I used the $302, 203, and not the 207,
Oh,
right? I used the wrong number. That's what I did. Do you see how I used this number instead of this total one? So
Yeah.
let me go ahead, rather than changing the amount of the payments, let me go ahead and replace this with the 207, 300. And so let's take the 207, 300 minus the 190, 780. And that gives me 15,520. And I think that's the difference. Just looking now, do you notice how when I subtracted, I used that number and this number instead of, yeah. So 15,520 should be better. I apologize for that. What was it, 15,520? That's what it was. Yeah, it wasn't anything at all to do with the rounding or the computation, and everything to do with my bad eyes pulling the wrong number out. I am so sorry. I guess moral of the story is be careful. I apologize. Did you see that time it worked?
yeah.
Okay.
It's okay. It happens sometimes.
Yeah, but and I apologize. I forget who asked the initial question. Was what you were wondering answered? Question 7 was the other one you were wondering about, the last one. And this one actually has nothing to do with the payments and all of that, and rather it has a lot to do with just finding percents. In terms of doing that, let's try this again. This question is different. And again, I didn't feel too guilty putting something so different in because it really just asks about percents. It first says, advice from most financial advisors state to spend no more than 28% of one's gross monthly income for one's mortgage payment, and to spend no more than 30% of one's gross monthly income for their total monthly debt. Suppose a family has a gross annual income of $42,000. What would be the maximum monthly mortgage payment? Well, this is an annual income, and they say that we're supposed to be 28% of the monthly income. So what do you think we ought to do to that annual income to get a monthly income?
Divided by 12.
Beautiful, I like it. And so when we take that 4,200, I'm sorry, 42,000, and divide by 12, we get it's $3,500 monthly. And the maximum is 28%. So to take that 28%, I'll change that 28% to a decimal and multiply it by the monthly income. And so the maximum that they should pay for a mortgage is $980. Is everybody all right with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Part B says, what's the maximum they should spend for total debt? Total debt is 36% of their monthly income. So I'm going to take that 0.36 and multiply it by that 3,500. And so the most that they should owe in any given month is $1,260. Part C says if the family's monthly mortgage payment is 70% of the maximum.
Excuse me, is that a 66 below 38? The 28?
It's 0.36.
Oh, 0.36, okay.
I'm sorry, the eraser on my stylus isn't working, so I just scribbled over. I should have gone back and changed it. And again, that comes from this part over here where it's 36%. Okay. Now, they're only paying 70% of the maximum they can afford. Well, the maximum they can afford is the $980. So they're paying $686. What else can they spend? Well, if this is what their mortgage is, and this is what their maximum debt is, wouldn't the difference between those $574 be what they have left to spend on other things? Does that make sense?
Where the 574 came from? What are we subtracting? 1,200?
That we're just subtracting down here.
That, okay, those two.
Maximum debt minus what they're paying for the mortgage. And so that really doesn't have anything to do with our interest formulas and loan formulas, but rather it has a lot to do with, realizing what it means to take, to find the monthly income, to take 28% of that, to find the monthly maximum debt, recommended amount of debt, to take 36% of that. To find what their payments are by taking 70% of that payment. And then to find what's left to spend, it's the difference between the maximum they can pay and the amount that they're paying for their mortgage. Better?
So then we just enter the 574.
Well, the answer for part A is the 980. The answer for part B is the 1260. And the answer for part C is the 574. I didn't start typing them in because I know the way my labs works. And if I started typing them in, all of those answers would go under the work I just did, which would be kind of messy.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah,
you just subtract A and B?
No, we have to take 70% of A. Over here, do you see how they say they're only paying 70% of the maximum? Okay. And that's what we subtract from B.
So multiply 70% from A.
All right. And I'm just looking at the time. And I was thinking we would end early today, but we're not. And so I have to apologize. I know I just let somebody in partway through class. William, I got you. Is there anybody else that I added that I need to add to attendance?